welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian, and I hope you're doing well and enjoying the podcast and the episodes so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so be sure to be subscribed wherever you're listening to be kept up to date. Today, we'll be covering bread. This is a hot topic, and lots of people have asked me about it in the past, and I think it's really important that we clarify and clear this up once and for all. So we'll be covering, is bread bad for weight loss, bread unhealthy, and what I advise with my clients to do when it comes to bread. So first of all, we'll cover, is bread bad for weight loss? And the research is quite deep on this, and I'll quote a few bits here, but one study that they did was basically comparing whole grain bread, refined bread, and no bread. So the difference between whole grain versus refined is the amount of the actual grain that they use. So they use the germ, and that has all the nutrients and fibre in it with the whole grain. Refined, they don't, and that's why it's probably a lot less nutritious. But in this study, they compared these three groups. When they looked at the results, they showed that actually the whole grain bread group lost more weight, experienced better blood sugar control, improved cholesterol levels, and lower blood pressure compared to the other groups, which is quite interesting. We've also found as well that the research is there to support bread actually helping with dieting and helping people stick to their diet. And bread is a key feature in a lot of Westerners' diets. It's something that we might have. We might have a bit of toast for breakfast, we might have some sandwiches for lunch, and we might even have some bread in one form or another for dinner. So often one of the things that people do is go, well, if I'm on a diet, I'm going to cut out all bread, because bread equals weight gain in a lot of people's opinion. But actually, the research doesn't suggest that. And actually, they show that people who include bread in their diet, when they show that calories are matched, actually helps people with adhering or sticking to their diet. And a few people drop off their diet when they include bread. And one of the studies actually showed that the group that had bread in their diet had a higher intake of total cereals and total fibre. And we know that fibre is hugely beneficial for overall health and well-being. And we know it's a key part of people having a good amount of fibre in their diet. One of the other studies as well showed that people who incorporated bread into a Mediterranean style diet, which we know has lots of health benefits regarding cardiovascular disease, were more likely to adhere to it and lose more weight. So all these things sort of match what I see in practice, that food, or that a single food, isn't the key to all our problems. It's quite reductionist to think that this thing is going to solve all our weight loss struggles. The food group alone isn't at fault. Being able to stick to your diet is actually hugely important when it comes to the process, especially when we're looking at long-term progress. Yes, you can stick to them for a couple of weeks. If you don't enjoy it, you can grin and bear it. But if we're looking at people who actually enjoy bread, enjoy sandwiches, enjoy things like pizza, toast, then actually telling them to include a bit of bread and maybe managing that can actually help them succeed long term, as they feel less restricted with their food choices. Will bread stop weight loss or cause weight gain? Actually, it won't. If it's part of a diet that causes a calorie deficit to help with weight loss, it won't. If it's part of a diet that causes a calorie surplus, then it will stop weight loss, because that's pushing us above the amount of calories that our body needs, and it will cause us to store those extra calories. So it's part of a bigger puzzle. So in short, it doesn't really matter what you eat when it comes to weight loss. It actually just comes down to eating less energy than you burn. If bread is a part of that and you enjoy bread, then fantastic. If you don't like bread, then you want to cut it out and you find it's an easy win, then brilliant. But I'd never go a blanket statement and say it's really bad for you. Actually, as we go into the next bit, we'll sort of explore whether it's actually healthy for us, which is a more important question in my opinion. Yes, weight loss is important in regards to health and it's intertwined, but actually when it comes to health, can it play a role? So now we need to cover the question that, is bread unhealthy or is it healthy? So across 6 studies of whole grain bread, there was an association found with a low risk of all-cause mortality, developing chronic kidney disease, developing stroke, developing type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, and colorectal cancer. So as you can see, there is a huge trend there. But as you've probably noticed, that all of those associations are with whole grain. And the question is, well, is whole grain healthier than white bread potentially, or non-whole grain, as we might say? And when we look into this, from a nutritional standpoint, I'd probably say yes, but health is multifaceted and there's lots of things to consider around availability, costs, preferences, dietary requirements, etc. So actually, people might just be doing their best and getting something, especially with the cost of living crisis at the moment, that actually just having some food for a lot of people is a huge win and a huge benefit. And often white bread is cheaper than whole grain, but if you can get whole grain, you can afford it, and you enjoy it, incorporate it into your lifestyle, then it's probably a better option. And also that these are correlations and potentially have confounding habits or factors, such as, I don't know, income could be one. People who eat whole grains may exercise more. They potentially eat more fiber, eat more fruits and veg, etc. So when we're looking at these correlations, there might be some other factors that need to be taken into account. Across all the studies, I can't say whether that has been taken into account or not, but I imagine not, that we're just looking at correlations over time and lots of people in big studies assessing their habits over time. And one of the questions might be, do you eat whole grain bread or refined white bread or non-whole grain bread? And from that, if they look at potentially life expectancy or risk of heart disease, that might be just a factor that they can find a correlation with. So not necessarily saying that this one factor will decide all those sort of outcomes, but when we're looking at the makeup, the difference between the two is the whole grain bread obviously is made up of the whole grain. That's what it actually means. When the sort of more processed, potentially white bread, they take away the germ of the grain, which actually has a huge amount of vitamins, fibers, minerals, and antioxidants. And like we said, it helps with fullness, supports digestion, and sort of provides loads of B vitamins and things like that. So in regards to nutritional quality of the food, it will be adding a lot more nutrition to your diet, potentially, depending on how much you're having. But the key lies in finding what's going to fit your lifestyle, your goals, and your preferences. One of the things that when I work with my clients and people that I work with in the NHS, one of the things that we might sort of suggest is trying to opt for the whole grain option when possible, depending on how much they have. It might be something that we sort of work on managing their bread intake as well. If they're having 3-4 slices of bread at one meal or multiple meals throughout the day, having those amounts, and they're going through half a loaf a day, then potentially we might have a look at some other options to manage their energy intake a little bit better if weight loss is a goal, and maybe having a look at how we might make those meals more filling with less bread present. Another one might be sort of reduce or replace that bread, so replacing it with potentially another starch carbohydrate option that's nutrient dense, so maybe a potato, sweet potato, something like that, or a whole grain pasta, some rice, swapping something else in there that can add to the meal, keep the carbohydrate content, but mix up the quality and quantity of different foods that we're having in there from a nutritional basis. But one thing I would say is that bread isn't the problem. It's never usually the problem. It can be a vehicle for the problem potentially. So if people are having toast, that rarely they're having plain toast. They might have generous serving of butter on top with some jam for breakfast, which can add more calories. And if they're having sandwich for lunch, it might not be the most nutritious sandwich that they're having. It might be having 4 slices of bread there, each got their own generous spreading of butter, and they might have a calorie dense filling in there where there's not much fiber, there's not much voluminous food, sort of like salads and fruits or veggies, and that could be the vehicle for increasing the calories. And that could be an easy win for us. We're going, right, we're going to actually change what's within the slice of bread there. And when we're looking at this, one thing can be to have a sort of range for people to work with. So one range might be, if you're looking for hard fact numbers, which I know some people want to take away from this, I'd say try and limit it between 1 to 2 meals a day where you're having 1 to 2 slices at a time. And this can be a useful guideline for people. So for breakfast, if you're having 1 to 2 slices of bread on toast, then obviously there might be better options that we could go for. But if that's something that you might have going, it might work with your schedule, it might work with your time, that might just be what you've got in, and that's completely fine. Then maybe at lunch, we're sort of limiting that to maybe 1 to 2 more slice of bread, and then dinner's got none at all, just to help manage that variety of foods in there. But also, like I said, can be a vehicle for higher calorie meals. So hopefully this short podcast today has helped cover, is bread bad for weight loss? And actually no, it can be hugely beneficial, help with people sticking to their diets, but also be useful in helping people feel more full from their meals, especially if they're going for a whole grain, having digestion, providing a more nutritious meal. Alongside that, is bread unhealthy? Actually, whole grain bread in particular is associated with lower all-cause mortality, lots of things like lower chance of developing type 2 diabetes, stroke, coronary heart disease, colorectal cancer, and kidney disease. So huge benefits that are associated, but these are associations. And then also some useful takeaways, things that I advise my clients around the limits of 1 to 2 pieces of bread per 1 to 2 meals per day. Usually have a look at ways that what we're having alongside those breads and how we can edit and adjust that as we go. But the main takeaway from this is that bread isn't a bad thing. It can be included in a very healthy diet, but it can also feature in a lot of unhealthy diets. So it's not the one problem. It's not the silver bullet you're looking for. If you like bread, feel free to have it. Maybe you need to just monitor and manage the amount that you're having. If you don't like bread, feel free to cut it out, but actually it can be really helpful to have it in your diet. So thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions or queries or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. But for now, catch you on the next episode.